The year is 2077. Guinea pigs run rampant, and PCs can barely run it. This is Cyberpunk. Before we get into this video, I'd like to take a moment to say not to forget to leave a like and subscribe, and comment if there's something you think I missed in this video. If there is some information you feel I should have covered, then commenting or joining the community Discord is one of the best ways to get in touch. Now without any further ado, let's dive into a quick spec recap. For the CPU, we've got a Ryzen 5 1600 clocked at 3.6 GHz. Under the stock cooler, this doesn't leave a lot of room for overclocking, but for stock operation, it's more than enough to keep our 12nm chip cool. Paired with our Ryzen chip, we've got 16 gigs of 3200 megatransfers per second DDR4 provided by TimeTech. If you're interested in checking out these specific modules, check out the links in the description below. For our GPU, we've got the RX 484GB. A mid-range card from 2016. It's got similar specs and performance to the PlayStation 4 Pro, so in terms of graphics horsepower, we've got plenty to power 1080p gaming. If you're interested in a full parts list, check the description below for a full price breakdown. Cyberpunk itself requires at least an FX 8310, a 4.3 GHz chip on the AM3 Plus socket, 8GB of RAM, and an RX 470. For both the CPU and GPU in this machine, we should be good, as this machine should, from the words of CD Projekt Red, GFX settings low be played at. Without any further ado, let's dive into Cyberpunk 2077. Let's start with 1080p low settings. With our RX 480, the card is sitting at 100% usage at almost all times, and returns a frame rate that hovers anywhere between 45 and 60 FPS. I have to say that although this game feels best at a locked 60Hz, it didn't feel bad on the budget system. Even though the graphics weren't pretty and the particle effects looked a bit questionable at times, the game overall maintained its art style surprisingly well, and looked like Cyberpunk while playing like Cyberpunk. It felt smooth to play for the most part, and to be honest, I can't put my finger on why. With the frame rates being like this, it shouldn't feel as smooth as it does, and makes me question how the game should feel at a locked 30 FPS instead. Either way, our CPU is sitting at roughly 50% usage, but to get an idea as to how much performance our CPU can pull, let's lower the resolution. Moving into 900p performance, and while the game is overall running better, we're still shy of that 60 FPS mark, indicating that we're hitting a single-threaded CPU bottleneck. Usage as a whole may be only at about 50%, but on a single thread the chip itself isn't powerful enough to run the game at a locked 60 FPS, and this is more illustrated when moving into 720p performance. It looks roughly the same, hanging out in the mid to low 50s, with our GPU still being hammered, and the CPU just hanging out around 50% still. This shows the CPU bottleneck and is just an issue with the specific chip we're using in this build. From an architectural perspective, it's simply due to the Zen Plus based Ryzen 5 1600AF having 6 execution ports per core, meaning less data parallelism than something with a beefier execution engine. In order to help the chip overcome this hardware limitation, we can overclock it so that we're able to process more instructions within a given period of time. Like previously mentioned in this video, our system doesn't have tons of overclocking headroom due to the stock cooler, so unfortunately it's not really an option on this system. But for you enthusiasts out there, that's how you would try to overcome this type of bottleneck. All in all, the system has honestly impressed me with how well it can run Cyberpunk. The game was notorious for running poorly on most hardware configurations, and I can happily say that I found one combo that can run the game at adequate settings and frame rates. Now, to be realistic, is this console killing? Well, unfortunately we'll have to wait to get the next gen patch on my Xbox Series S. But in the here and now, this is definitely a console killing experience. Not only in the fact that you can tune the game to your heart's content, but you can also play at different resolutions, different frame rates, different settings, and change up how the game looks. You can tweak the balance between visuals and performance, and it's one of the aspects that I personally love about the PC platform. Consoles just don't have as much customization due to the limited hardware. And while that's completely understandable, we aren't as limited with this budget machine, specifically in the case of the GPU performance and overall memory pools. But we do lose some CPU performance compared to the Xbox Series S, so we win some and we lose some. But as an overall experience, I think that the budget PC is much better due to the customizability of the software combined with the upgradability of the hardware. Keep in mind that this is not just a gaming machine as well. It can handle editing videos, Word documents, and even more.